Good day, everyone. London Onion here with another Remnant 2 build that we will jump right into. This build is led by the Warden, and we have the Challenger as our secondary. The skills we employ are the Drone Shield for the Warden and Juggernaut on the Challenger. Now, these are probably some obvious breadcrumbs to the build we are constructing, that being high levels of defense. Carrying on, this Onion equips the complete feeder armor set, which will bring us to a heavy 80 units of encumbrance. Transitioning to the weapons, our primary is the tried and true Bonesaw LMG with the Skewer mod and bottom heavy mutator. The secondary is the corrupted cube gun with the superheated mutator. Lastly, for melee, this Onion decided to go with the Wrathbringer with the volatile strike mutator. The significance in our weapon choices resides with how they affect each other. This is mostly noticeable from the corrupted cube gun toward the other weapons. The superheated mutator will inflict burning to everybody within the stated radius, including our explorer. But this is great.
No! No, this is terrible!
The flames are not terribly devastating to the wielder, but this should probably be avoided if at critical health. However, we'll speak on the contingencies a bit later. From setting ourselves ablaze, the Wrathbringer's Awakening mod gets maximized in seconds.
This is good, isn't it?
Yes.
With a significant damage boost and volatile strike added on, most common targets will not stand very long. One will typically inflict at least 1600 damage units per strike. This is not including weak spot hits or critical strikes. And the cooldown for volatile strike is perfectly timed for consecutive charged melee strikes. Activation of Juggernaut may throw off this timing, but that is an insignificant caveat in this Onion's opinion. As for the Bonesaw and corrupted cube gun, the cube room grants a significant volume of ammo to be replenished and will reduce heat generation by 15% for 15 seconds. This would allow the Bonesaw to fire much longer before overheating for an effectively lower ammo penalty. Skewer is mostly a preferential choice and is not necessarily integral to the success of this build. This Onion will say that the damage is good and it is not hazardous like other mods we have considered, but that may be for a different video. Carrying on with the build, the amulet leading this one is the famous Difference Engine. While a shield is active, all damage is increased by 20%, and 4.5% of base damage is dealt as lifesteal. The rings we go with are Custodian's Bastion, Dried Clay Ring, Generating Band, and Dull Steel Ring. Custodian's Bastion increases armor by 1 unit for every 2% of an active shield. Dried Clay Ring grants a stack of Bulwark and increases all damage by half of the total damage reduction granted from Bulwark. Generating Band replenishes 3% of health per second while a shield is active. Lastly, Dull Steel Ring reduces dodge weight threshold by 1 level. This brings our encumbrance down from a heavy 80 units to a more moderate/normal 80 units. Special attention will be paid to the Custodian's Bastion and Dried Clay Ring. With more shields comes more damage reduction, and we're lucky to get a Bulwark stack from the Warden's Safeguard perk while the drone is deployed. On top of this, Dried Clay Ring grants a stack of Bulwark and increases all damage by half of the damage reduction granted from Bulwark. With just 2 stacks, this is not much. But for those who were paying attention, Juggernaut will maximize our stacks for 25 seconds and grant a 12.5% increase to all damage. Now this is not our only source of Bulwark stacks. The Challenger perk, Face of Danger, grants 2 stacks and a 10% damage increase upon relic use within 10 meters of an enemy. Now the duration is not long, and obviously can't be an answer for everything, but these conditions informed our decision for the relic, to which this Onion had decided to go with the Lifeless Heart.
Excuse me? Do what?
Now, even though it does not provide any healing, what got this Onion sold was the speed of use and doubled capacity. Now before you start slicing this Onion for my awful relic choice, it is worth noting that the Warden's Energize perk also provides a shield for 10 seconds and allows the drone to protect the caster with no energy cost. Due to Generating Band, shields mean health, and health means we don't die. It is important to note, the drone must still have Nerudian energy to use, otherwise the relic will have no effect on the drone's energy cost. Alright, we're almost through. The traits this Onion employs are 8 units of the Engineer's Fortify, 9 units of Vigor, Expertise, Amplitude, Bark Skin, Recovery, Resolute, Shadeskin, and Insight. As for the Prism, we recycle our Prism of Lethargy that we had used with the Masochistic Monolith build, a cousin of our current build, and employ Stamina bonus, Explosive damage, and Cast speed. The fusions are Warrior, Tank, Hulk, and Mage, with health regeneration taking our last slot. Now, outside of an Alchemist build, this onion usually treats concoctions as bonuses that are left up to each Paxeltech's preferences. However, for this build, this onion preferred to use Bark Extract as our bonus for a 30 unit increase in our armor. Now, the meta of this build is important. It thrives in being up close, and to an extent, taking damage. But there are, of course, limitations and contingencies for these limitations. No matter the damage reduction one may have, there will always be such a thing as too much damage.
They're tough, but they ain't invincible.
Although our relics are numerous, they should ideally be saved for when one does not have shields and is approaching critical health, or when contingency becomes activated. Additionally, this is a close-range oriented build with limited long-range efficacy. Yes, the Bonesaw is like one of the perfect well-rounded weapons of Remnant 2, and will allow our bolstered Blitzer,
embarrassing name,
to be reasonably effective at any range. But its strength truly lies in the Corrupted Cube Gun and Wrathbringer melee weapon. In fact, this build is at its absolute strongest, with the Cube Room active, Juggernaut activated, full shields, the Cube Gun overheated, a relic consumed, and of course swinging the Wrathbringer with charged intent. But this should be noted as more of an escalation protocol than a prescription for how the build should be used for the majority of enemy encounters. The degree of shields and damage reduction allow our Blitzer to hang in a brawl without overcompensating punishment received as an outnumbered target. There are of course limits to this, which was part of the reason the Bonesaw was employed. The close-range prowess of the Cube Gun and Wrathbringer required some balancing.
This whole thing should be.
Taking into account this build's offensive, defensive, and synergistic capability, I would classify this build as a dynamic fighter type. The beauty of dynamic builds is that not every encounter requires a maximized response, but allows one to fine-tune their offense/defense to fit the perils before them. Up the ante as the ante is upped. A tactic this onion likes to use with the Corrupted Cube Gun is controlled fire. 2 shots create a mini explosion, meanwhile 5 shots plus will overheat the weapon, creating a much larger explosion. The dynamic nature of this build can really come out when one decides to use more of the controlled explosions, which would involve keeping the heat meter above 1/4. This tactic will naturally demand that one dances around their target while constantly keeping the overheat meter just above 1/4. And one doesn't even have to necessarily aim at their target. As long as they maintain a heat generation above 1/4, they will constantly do explosions every few seconds, minimizing incentive to retreat from any target that wishes to invade personal space. Our bolstered Blitzer is comfortable fighting on its front foot and dominating enemies that like to invade personal space. It is the unstoppable force to a given immovable object. Stepping away from the exaggeration, distant and evasive targets will force the use of the LMG, which is not bad, but is the least effective offensive option. Skewer, however, does help with ranged offense. Further on the limitations, just as there is beauty to dynamism, there is a second side to the sword. In order for the bolstered Blitzer to operate at its strongest, there are several steps, as we had just outlined, and perfect circumstances that must be present. In other words, there is no simplified capitalization of offense, and there are some enemies that will be difficult to maintain at a close space. This is simply a byproduct of this style of build. Now, I won't necessarily call this last one a limitation under regular circumstances, but in all of the bolstered Blitzer's glory and prowess, there are times where this onion considered it appropriate to remain idle while the drone charges up its energy and maximizes our shield, or periodically stand idle in the cube room to replenish ammo. Depending on circumstances, this onion would sometimes overheat the weapon just to maximize the Wrathbringer awakened stacks before engaging with an enemy. I don't think there is any shame in this. Every car needs to stop for gas or a charge at some point. This can make boss battles somewhat interesting, but that is a discussion for another time. Now that concludes our build for today. Stay tuned for part 2, where this onion will expand on our bolstered blitzer with boss efficacy. It's been London Onion, and I'll see you guys next time.